There are prayers, spoken again and again, yet the heart remains silent. There are evenings when a person kneels down, but the mind keeps wandering through exhaustion and anxiety. Faith has not disappeared. It is only veiled. A powerful prayer life does not begin with saying the right words, but with daring to remain in one's own honest silence. When a person stops trying to impress God, prayer finally reaches its depth. No longer a list of requests, no longer a formula, only presence. And when the heart dares to open just as it truly is, prayer no longer rises upward. It settles downward, touching the very roots of faith, where quiet transformation begins to take shape. When prayer begins to slow, a person starts to hear what was always being missed. Not a voice from outside, but a gentle movement within the inner life. Many believe that prayer must feel strong, fervent, full, overflowing. Yet on the journey of faith, it is often the driest moments where truth is quietly at work. There, the soul learns to remain, not because of emotion, not because of results, but solely because of relationship. When a person stops measuring the value of their prayers, God begins to touch something deeper than desire. Not to remove the burden at once, but to teach how to carry it with meaning. A powerful prayer life is built on silent faithfulness, day after day, in moments no one else can see. Gradually, prayer no longer revolves around changing circumstances, but around being transformed from within. A person begins to realize that what truly drains them is not the trial itself, but the fear of being alone with their own truth. In the silence of prayer, layers of masks fall away, slowly. Not forced, not judged. And it is there that faith begins to mature. No longer childish, chasing immediate miracles, but steady, rooted in trust. You may not feel anything changing on the outside, yet within, a new order is quietly taking shape. The presence of God does not announce itself loudly, but it is deep enough to reshape the way a person walks through life itself. Then there comes a moment when prayer is no longer separate from life. The line between kneeling down and standing back up begins to disappear. Every ordinary action carries a quiet breath turned toward God. When the soul has learned to remain in presence, worry does not vanish, but it no longer rules. Pain still arrives, yet it no longer isolates a person from meaning. You begin to live more slowly. Not because there is less to do, but because you are no longer fragmented within. A powerful prayer life does not pull a person out of the world. It returns them to it, with an inner life reordered, more grounded, more gentle, and deeper in faith. And from that place, prayer begins to shape how a person sees others. There is less urgency to judge, less hunger to control. When one has learned to stand before God in truth, there is no longer a need to prove oneself right. A certain softness appears, not as weakness, but as the mark of a heart that has been touched. You begin to notice that the strongest prayers are sometimes spoken without words. They live in patience when you are misunderstood, in calm steadiness when outcomes fall short of hope. At that point, faith is no longer a private moment set apart. It becomes a quiet light, guiding every small choice, day after day. There is a very deep stage when prayer no longer tries to avoid the darkness. A person dares to bring their doubts, their weariness, their unanswered questions before God. And something unexpected happens. Not every question receives an answer, yet the soul no longer trembles before them. In that space, faith grows into maturity. It no longer rests on the feeling of being constantly protected, but on a steady presence, even when nothing feels clear. You no longer pray to escape suffering, but to keep from losing yourself within it. A different kind of strength begins to form, quiet, enduring, and difficult to shake. And little by little, a person comes to understand that a strong prayer life does not make life easier. It makes the soul deep enough that life cannot break it. In prayer, one learns to release hasty answers, to let God be God, and to allow oneself to be human, fragile, yet not without meaning. You begin to walk through uncertainty no longer in panic, but with a quiet trust, not needing certainty that everything will turn out well, only the assurance that you do not walk alone. And within that trust, prayer continues to grow, not loudly, but deep enough to carry an entire life. At that point, prayer is no longer something scheduled into a fixed time. It becomes the ground on which a person stands. Every event, every loss, everything that cannot be repaired is brought into that presence. Not to understand it all, but not to collapse. Faith, at this stage, does not proclaim itself loudly. It quietly holds the soul in place, even when every other motivation has run dry. You come to see that the strength of prayer is not found in bringing God closer, but in keeping a person from running away from themselves. And when there is no more running, the heart learns to stand firm in a peace that does not depend on circumstance. At this point, prayer no longer takes the shape of searching, but of remaining. There is less striving to understand God's will in every small event, only the learning of trust, even when understanding does not come. The maturity of faith is revealed in the ability to dwell within imperfection without losing faithfulness. One no longer demands constant signs, having learned to recognize presence in very ordinary things. You may still feel tired, still anxious, still hoping something will change. But deep beneath it all, a quiet pillar has taken form. And it is this pillar that keeps the soul standing upright against the winds of life, without the need to speak or prove its strength. And then, the deepest realization emerges. Not how to pray, but who a person has become after those hours of silence. A strong prayer life does not create perfect people. It forms souls who are no longer afraid to be alone. There is no longer a need for noise to feel secure, no rush to be noticed. You walk through life with a heart that is anchored, not certain of every path, yet steady in meaning. And if anything is truly being asked to remain, it is a very small faithfulness, day after day, in silence. For it is there that prayer continues to live.